Link, you have a prepaid call from
Free. It's about 1:15 on August 2nd.
an inmate at the Salinas Valley State Prison, Soledad, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Lazor.
How you doing, Rudy?
I'm doing good. I was just thinking about the highlights of your case that come to mind when I think about you, and I don't know if it's worth me taking 30 seconds and like repeating it back to you, and you can tell me if I missed any.
Sure.
Okay, 35 years in prison, denied parole because the guards constantly write you up just before the parole repeatedly over a period of years. It was a self-defense shooting. The man came at you with a meat cleaver, knocked the hinges off the door. The coroner, his name is Ozoa. He's well known to have corruption, and he's been investigated and actually convicted. It's easy to look that up, that there's coroner corruption.
Hold on.
Yep.
Hold on. Let me interject because otherwise I'm going to forget. Can I interject?
Sure, yeah. You bet.
Okay. You said knock the hinges off the door. No, it didn't knock the hinges off the door. It just blasted the door wide open. It splintered the door jamb. Just went to pieces all over.
Got it. Okay.
All these little pieces of wood hit me. Okay, and as far as the coroner, he wasn't convicted of anything. He was proven to have falsified the autopsy report. And really, this is even more important to me, the fact that he wasn't convicted. And he wasn't. There's a doctor in my corner that I've known for since way before I came to prison, and he keeps every time he writes about this to the parole board or to the governor, whoever, he keeps saying that Ozoa was fired, disbarred from from being a doctor by the board. That's not true. He kind of exaggerated and went overzealous in what has been saying, and I don't want that misinformation out there. The fact that Ozoa was not, I can't think of the right term, disbarred is only for attorneys, but was not cut out of the medical board by the medical board people says a lot in itself. It shows that the corruption goes all the way up to the medical board because they had all the information. I had written numerous complaints to them. They danced around my complaints and then eventually said, oh, it's too late, you filed it too late, which wasn't true. And there are about 4 exceptions, including fraud and including cover-up, to a filing deadline anyway. So for a number of reasons, the board was just covering up for him and lying about the reasons that they were not compelled by law to fire him, to kick him out of the medical profession. So that says a lot to me. So he was not kicked out, but what was absolutely proven, and it was proven in the courts, was that it was proven on a lawsuit by a man named Nelson Galbraith that Ozoa falsified that autopsy report. He claimed that there was all this strangulation evidence and that the guy had strangled his wife, when in fact when the body was exhumed and another independent coroner from out of state was brought in, found that Ozoa had never even cut the parts on the body that you have to cut to get down in there to determine if there was strangulation or not. So he was absolutely busted in that way, and then he got in the Ninth Circuit court when he was before the Ninth Circuit court testifying, a federal court testifying. He got caught committing perjury about all of this. So those two things, both the falsification of autopsy reports and the perjury, and I want to also add with that issue, because it's very important, that the coroner's office, where he was under investigation for several years, as I understand it, and including the time of my trial and for at least a year or two prior to my trial, and thereafter was still under investigation. And when I say under investigation, I'm not just saying they were investigating, I'm saying the investigation uncovered massive, almost unprecedented fraud in coroner's offices. It was beyond belief. I used to have some information on that. I need to get more information on it by going back into the news articles and other sources of information. But that's also an important part to perhaps mention, if you can put that all in a nutshell.
Okay.
Okay, the floor is back to you.
Okay, very good. So I'm gonna highlight the fact that you never had a criminal record before this, nothing whatsoever. You had an aspiring musical future. Is the meat cleaver a true statement?
Oh, absolutely. Everything you stated that I didn't just to clarify, was absolutely correct and right on target.
All right, so the guy's coming at you with a meat cleaver. He busts the door jamb down. It was a self-defense shooting. And
completely broke the door. Completely broke the door open.
Got it.
A locked door.
Was it your own house, or
15 times?
This is a house that you owned, or you were renting, or how do I word that?
I owned the house. I was a renter in the house for about a year, and then I bought the house structure. I was real estate licensed, so I bought the house structure. I'd done this in other situations where I bought 5 houses from the city of Fremont that were going to be burned down by the fire department because they needed to have those demolished. So I was familiar with this process, and what I did is I bought the house structure to be moved onto another piece of land that belonged to a real estate partner of mine, but there was no hurry to move it because he hadn't got the financing that he needed for condominiums that he was going to build in his place. So it was a win-win situation for him. I paid him a token amount of money for the house structure. The house structure was then mine. I owned it, but it sat on his piece of land. Now,
when you say his piece of land, you're not talking about the guy who busted down the door. This is another gentleman.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. No, I'm glad you clarified that. The uncle, that was the guy that broke down my door was a nephew of the man who owned the land and who had sold me that house.
Okay.
And
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
That's what this was all about, besides the fact that he was on SSRI medications that made him go into rage attacks like that, and whatever possible mental defects he might have had. But the main impetus for him attacking me and having attacked me several other times, even in public, prior to this day of the shooting, was that he was jealous that I bought the house from his uncle several months before he moved into town, and he wanted that house for himself. But It was too late. I'd already bought it.
Got it.
That's what the whole impetus was for the whole thing.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so you mentioned SSRI. That's a big thing even nowadays today. Do you know what specific SSRIs?
I don't know.
Okay.
And my attorney, as well as the DA and the whole DA team, covered all that information up. It took me years to get that information, although we knew that he had just come straight from his doctor's office and was prescribed some medications for his whatever conditions he had. He had a number of conditions. He had really bad hepatitis. He had AIDS that wasn't even coined yet as the word AIDS. He had HIV and various other problems that were affecting him both physically and mentally, and he was taking medications for these things. I later found out, took me years to find out, he was taking SSRI drugs that he got from a doctor in Oakland. It came straight from there, from the doctor to getting the medications to my house.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, because this SSRI thing, it's so obvious to people that have eyes to see and ears to hear that it really seems to mess with a human being's mental functions, and whether it be suicide or, erratic of violent behavior, it certainly seems to play a role so many times in these school shootings as well. I'm going to say that you were an aspiring music... Yep.
Yeah, let me just interject one other thing on that first. The best case for that is probably Kurt Danish. I think it's Danish. I think he may be in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure what state, but I used to be in touch with him about his... he murdered his father, who he loved dearly and had never had any kind of problem with his father, but he was on SSRI medications, went into a rage attack and murdered him. He was in prison for a very long time. I think he still is for probably at least 20, 25 years now.
What state was that? What state did that happen in?
I'm not 100% sure of the state, but my
could it have been
Texas? Is it was probably Pennsylvania. His first name is Kurt. His last name is Danish, which is an odd spelling, not exactly like the country. I think it's Danish. I don't know. You might have to play with it.
Okay, because, that story where a man, goes nuts for a little bit and kills his father, we have a lady down the road who told us exactly that same story, so it's shocking. I'm wondering if it's the same guy. I'll have to go ask her, what his name was.
It could be the same guy, but there are a number of those type of cases because of the SSRI drugs. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to describe you as you had an aspiring musical future. People referred to you as the young Buddy Holly, and you were growing, phenomenal in popularity, and that you have over, is it 400? I want to use the right number. Is it 400 reference letters of people writing character letters about you, about your character and friends and family? And is it how many letters is it? I don't want to exaggerate if it's
there's probably over 400 on my website, and there's been another 100 to 150 written since that. I just haven't had time to even send the copies out to my guy that runs my website.
Okay, all right. So I'll just use the word hundreds. I'll just use the word hundreds. It could be as high as 400 to 500. And so if anybody wants to go look at these letters that have been written as a character witness for you, it certainly shows that you have a lot of people that care about you and love you and know that you have been done a huge injustice. And so 35 years for a self-defense shooting is unheard of in this country, especially you being the owner of your house and the castle doctrine that you ought to be able to protect yourself when somebody busts into your own house. So that's kind of the highlights that I plan on, setting this thing up because we're going to do a section on you this Monday, and I hope that you can dial in. I did look at the commercial break, and I've also talked to Ken Massat. He may join us, but if you can join us around 9:30 Central, which will be 7:30 your time, that'll give you a long period in between commercial breaks.
That's what I'm going to shoot for. And just for the record, of course, the he's going to, if he had the opportunity here, when he does have the opportunity, he always rebuts that and says, oh, no, of course, this wasn't your house, and this wasn't this, and this didn't happen this way. But that's what I want to show. I brought the 3552 document here to the phone because when you and I get done with this part, I wanted to go into starting to show the fraud that they did to frame me, to falsify all these things so they could tell a jury, no, this was this way, this was this way. And because my attorney has been proven, hands down, without any question, to have been working with them to send me to prison, I was never allowed to refute so much of these things. I did get on the witness stand. I was repeatedly threatened by my attorney that if you don't not say what I tell you not to say and say exactly what I say to say, then I'm pulling you off the witness stand and you're not going back on the stand, and then you get convicted for sure. And I believed that I could not fire him because he led me to believe that. He was already paid in full, and he was attorney of record, and between him and inferences made by the court itself, they inferred to me, or he actually told me, you can't fire me. You're stuck with me now through the duration of trial because I'm your attorney of record. And I consulted with a few of my friends. None of my friends had ever been in trouble with the law. Even I have very, very smart and intelligent friends. Them are like doctors and such, no lawyers. And so they weren't able to tell me, and I tried to call a few lawyers. And as soon as I said, I have an attorney hired and I'm on bail for murder, they said, well, can't even talk to you. It's against the ethics code of the bar for us to even talk to you any further because you have an attorney hired. Goodbye. And what I was trying to get them to listen to was my question, can I fire him? I don't want him, but they never even let me get that far. When that happened to about 3 different attorneys, I thought, okay, well, I guess he's telling me the truth as wrong as it sounds.
Wow.
So,
okay,
you're floored.
No. We've got about 2.5 minutes. That's pretty much the highlights, that I have in my mind right now. I do plan on studying your case and, going through some of your documents that are on your Facebook and your website. Okay. So that's kind of what's in my mind right now, and I wanted you to hear that to be able to comment on it and correct me. So thank you.
Yes. Well, one thing, the music, even though it was a huge part of my life and it's a main part of my life, it was not like so outstanding that it should be mentioned alone or almost alone, because I was also acting in major films. I had inventions. Now I have several hundred at least. Back then I had dozens, if not more than dozens, scores of inventions. Many of them have now been put out by other people years and decades after I had them that they've made multi-million dollars from. So I was definitely on the verge of becoming a multi-millionaire and even billionaire with some of my invention stuff. And so there's a whole lot more. And I was a candidate to be the first astronaut to go into outer space. It was not a government, government employee. So, like Project Private Enterprise was the name of the rocket program that Robert Truax from NASA was doing at Fremont Airport, and I was there helping him build his little rockets. And I was going to be the first man up there. And so all that stuff I lost out. And there was just so much more that I was doing than just, success in the music business, Renaissance.
Okay, gotcha. Incredible life story. You've been given a full cup by God, no doubt about it.
Yeah. I praise him and thank him for giving me these gifts. I don't credit any of it to just me.
Amen.
But okay, so we're going to run out of time. Are you able to have me call you right back? If I'm able to,
yes.
I may be able to, I may not.
You bet.
Okay, if
please.
I can, we'll try to get right into 3552. Let me first say this much, right up until we get cut off, or unless you got anything else you want to interject.
Nope, I'm done.
I have so many. Okay,
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have 60 seconds remaining.
just phenomenal first in my case. Like, I did not have a public trial because the scam my attorney ran about, well, I'm not going to let any of these people, your family, your friends, nobody be in the courtroom because I might bring any of them in as character witnesses, only to later find out that he admitted he never intended to bring them in as character witnesses, and character witnesses don't fall under that rule that they can't be in the courtroom and then testify. Only evidence witnesses fall under that. So that was no public trial.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
According to the U.S. Supreme Court, I've never even been sentenced to prison. I went through a sentencing process, but they violated something so severe that the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that voids your whole sentencing proceeding when that happens. And I'll try to explain that later. But I'm going to hang up now because it's going to cut us otherwise, and I will try to call you right back and do some more of this 3552, okay?
Okay, very good, Free.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, goodbye.
We can keep talking if you want. He might call right back.
Well, yeah, if he does, you know what I'm going to ask him to explain is what the numbers 3355 mean.
Yeah, and he obviously had ineffective counsel, and I didn't know that you couldn't fire your lawyer, and I find it interesting that you can't even speak to a lawyer if you have another lawyer hired. That's really monopoly.
They say it's unethical, but
monopoly.
Yeah, well, these lawyers are just from the loins of hell. I've never met a lawyer.
Free Lazor.
Never met a lawyer my whole life that I had any respect for.
This is Global Tellink. You have a prepaid call from
Free, try it again.
an inmate at the Salinas Valley State Prison, Soledad, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tellink.
Hey,
Okay,
hey, free. Yep, I am. But real quick, you might explain what the numbers 3355 mean, if those are the proper numbers, because when you refer to that, I'm going to talk about my 3355. People don't have a clue, and even I don't really know what the numbers mean specifically. Okay.
I'll explain it right now. Okay, this document that I refer to as the 3552 is a document that anybody can look up on my website, which is www.free-lazor.org. And if you go to the 3552, I named it that just for quick reference. What it is it's 35 different issues that I have in this one briefing and 52 exhibits that back up that issue. Actually, it's grown to 53 exhibits now, I think. But what they are is just the items of evidence that were falsified in some way, whether planted, altered, destroyed if they were in my favor, manufactured out of thin air, just created and made up, all those type of things. These 35 issues, actually the last few of them are things like jury instructions that tie into them, but up till about number 25 or 28, they are just these kind of things that they systematically went out of their way separately. So nobody can say, well, we it was an oversight, it was an accident that we let these fingerprints get faded away or whatever. Nobody can say that because they did 25 to 30 some specific activities going out of their way over a period of months, all at different times, to falsify this evidence to frame me for murder. So I'll start with the first one I've got on the list here, the meat cleaver weapon. He attacked me with a meat cleaver, which is in the photographs, the police photographs of the crime scene when they got to the crime scene, but yet the jury had no clue that I was ever attacked by him with a meat cleaver because my attorney would not allow me to present that. Attacker's fingerprints on a pistol. He also had what...
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
He had in his hand a high-powered... He might have had it in his belt or whatever at first, but at some point in the shooting, which probably took about 7 seconds or so, including me trying to get the phone to work afterward, and then running out the door, he had a high-powered BB pellet pistol. Whatever the reasons were for that, to frighten me or to actually use it to shoot an eye out or something, because you can actually do a lot of damage with those, we don't know, but his fingerprints were all over it in tacky, dried-up blood of his. And we went, my attorney and I went and looked at it after the shooting, after I was out on bail, and you could see his actual fingerprints in it. So then the police took that pistol, put it in an autoclave, which is what a heat steam sterilizer that dentists use to sterilize dental tools. and they knew that that would run the blood and destroy the fingerprints. That's why they put it in there. In the history of this country, I've never been able to find a case of tens of thousands of cases I've researched where anybody has put something like that in an autoclave, and then the DA argued powerfully over and over and over again to the jury that that proves that I planted that gun on Allred because the flowing of the blood caused by the autoclave, and the jury didn't know about that part. What he argued was white smear marks from a towel there at the scene that I wiped my own fingerprints off to destroy my fingerprints. So everything in this case is this kind of chicanery and fraud by the whole prosecution team, police, coroner, criminalist, DA himself, or deputy DA, and my attorney backing them up on all this stuff. Next is the towel I just mentioned. There was a towel at the scene, and they claimed that this was a towel I used to wipe these fingerprints off the gun, rather. And when we in fact proved, but the jury didn't know we proved it. We proved it off record. Proved that the medics admitted they brought that towel to the scene after I called them. So it had nothing to do with being there before the medics got there. Before the medics got there, the police had already put me in handcuffs and in a patrol car. So the body of the attacker, the body itself, there's not another case I can find in U.S. history here as well, where they took the body and cremated it before the defense, me or my attorney or anybody on my side had a chance to get to it. They hastily cremated the body to make sure that they could then argue that there were more bullet holes than were originally shot by me, and that one of the bullet holes, the one that went through, went from, they argue, that I shot him in the back and came out his front. When now, 18 years later, I got police photographs, coroner photographs, that show that the bullet hole wound in his back is bigger than in the front, and as we know, when a bullet goes through a body, it always comes out more mush, and a bigger hole comes out where it comes out, and that goes in. So I've proven that basically, but by them destroying the body, cremating the body, and then arguing that, it just, was a terrible case against me, and it made me look bad as somebody who would shoot somebody in the back. The jacket of the attacker with the bullet hole evidence, they deliberately altered it, then spoiled it, then concealed it to where it was never brought out in evidence, but it still exists in lockup right now to this day and could be examined to find out, to prove absolutely that the bullet hole came from the front to the back. Overshirt of the attacker, similar thing. They actually took one of his shirts and put it in a hefty garbage bag and threw it in the trash for the trash collector to come and pick up. And they had some other items in there that they wanted to conceal, including the doorknob from my door that he smashed in, that a bent steel, latch in that doorknob was bent, showing the critical force, the extreme amount of force he used to get at me in his rage attack. And they took those things and put them in a hefty garbage bag, and when my people were allowed to go to my own home, I was not allowed to step on my property weeks after the event, but other people were on my behalf to collect my belongings out of my own house because they said it was going to be sealed up for months with evidence tape. They picked up that garbage bag and it ended up in my hands, and I got some of these things and took them to my attorney, and instead of going, wow, this is a bonanza to prove that the police were trying to destroy this evidence and it's stuff in my favor, he hid it. He hid it in his desk drawer for the duration of trial, would never let me get access to it, and I had to spend at least a half a year, 3/4 of a year after my trial and conviction getting that stuff back from him by complaints through the state bar. Let's see, overshirt attacker, undershirt attacker, similar things. Autopsy photos.
I do have a question, but go ahead. I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but I do have a question.
You can.
Okay, so
you can. I've got a list here that I'm following, so you go ahead.
Okay, so just thinking about I'm just thinking, Free, about this whole situation, and it seems to all, from my perspective, if you can prove this is your house, right? If you can prove this is your house that you're in, all that other stuff seems to melt away. Whether you shot him from the front or the back, or it's like the corruption and the. I mean, if it's your house, who cares how you shot him?
No, it doesn't.
Why is that?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't melt away because it's a limitation thing. If somebody comes at you and you wound them sufficiently to, and this is a good law in my opinion, and you wound them sufficiently to disable them to where they can no longer keep coming at you, and then you shoot them further anyway, or do something to kill them anyway, then that's going beyond the need for self-defense.
Well,
okay, it's a good law.
Okay. So the prosecution, are they arguing that this is not your house? What did they argue? That they're arguing that you're squatting in a house that you don't even own and that it didn't even belong to you?
Exactly.
Okay.
You even used the right word that they tried to use, which was ridiculous. Except the DA knew that he could get away with all of this crazy stuff, that I had evidence to prove that he was just making it up and that it was totally fraudulent, fraudulent case, frame-up job, because he knew that he had to deal with my attorney, and he knew that this attorney would not let me get the evidence into the jury, into that courtroom, and he knew my attorney was even sitting on something.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
And preventing me from getting access to it to bring it to the trial.
Okay, so you had incredible, ineffective assistance of counsel, no doubt about that. But what about this uncle? Would this uncle, because he loved his nephew so much, he wouldn't testify that you actually did buy the house and had the proper paperwork? I mean, the uncle wouldn't testify on your behalf either? Or?
Well, no, he was one of the key prosecution witnesses against me, and he lied a lot to help set me up to go to prison. He wanted me badly to go to prison for killing his nephew.
I see.
Or in his mind, for killing his nephew.
I got you.
But he did say some things. Interesting that you asked that pointed question. He did say that I don't think he used the word purchase, but that I obtained the house from him. So he was trying to hide money because of little petty, problems he had with the IRS. So he was trying to hide that he was paid for this. But he did say, he said, yes, Lazor obtained the house from me and it was his.
Wow.
Structure.
So he admitted that on the witness stand. Okay.
Yes, and believe me, the prosecution didn't expect him to admit that. They were pretty upset that he did, but he did.
Yeah.
And so that's on record.
Okay.
That's on the transcripts.
Okay.
Okay, let me go to the next thing. The autopsy photos, it took me 18 years to get, 16 years to get them. I thought it was 18. I got written down here 16 until 1999. And those photos show the bullet hole went from front to back, just like I always said, indicating self-defense and completely demolishing their ridiculous, fraudulent presentation that it was deliberate murder from the back. Low-power bullet loads. My bullets were for target practice. They were reloads, and they're specifically very low power. Now, if I was going to set up something to want to kill somebody, and they charged me with first-degree murder and made up this whole scenario about how I pre-planned this and all this nonsense, there was nothing to support it, but they created whatever they wanted to support it as fraudulent evidence. But had I done that, obviously I would have had hollow point bullets that would kill immediately or something like that. Well, these were low power bullets, substandard powder and grain, and yet the coroner, the DA himself, several police officers all testified that these were full, regular 45 bullets that would have knocked the guy down the first time and knocked him out, and that I didn't need to shoot any more than one shot. As far as I knew, I shot only 2 shots anyway, but it turns out there were four different bullets that hit him, and some of them were not from my gun because they're too small of a caliber, or too small of a hole in his body to be from my gun. So this is more stuff we'll get into. The thing just gets incredibly fraudulent, and this is, I think, why I'm being kept in prison all the time, because as I continue to raise this stuff, continue to present it, they want me shut up, and they do not want this information.
Well, what were you actually, anyway, if you weren't convicted of first-degree murder, what were you convicted of?
I was convicted of second-degree murder. First-degree murder in California, this is different from state to state. First-degree murder is always worse, though, in any state where there's the two split. So first-degree murder carried 25 years in prison, supposedly 25 years to life. Second-degree murder carried 10 years less, 15 years, supposedly 15 years to life, and two years for the firearm. So in my case, 17 years. Split in half because of half-time credits. This is something I want to clarify, too. So many people that are trying to help me out there, they keep saying, well, this is a 17-year sentence, and I've done double that. I shouldn't be in prison for double my sentence. No, it's 4 times that, because we got, by law, by statute, what I was sentenced to was getting half-time credit for good time, work time credits in prison, and I earned all that. So my sentence was 8.5 years, roughly, give or take a few months. My release date was May 1, 1992, and by law, there's nothing legally holding me in prison since May 1, 1992. It's all kidnap status since that date.
Wow, incredible.
The case is jaw-dropping beyond belief, but somebody's got to get my information out there, which finally you're in the process of doing. So anyway, substandard bullet loads. This is why it took my first shot didn't knock him down. This is all split-second stuff. I don't know how many shots I fired, but I thought I fired 2. But there were 5 holes in him. One in his hand was too small to be made from my gun. So we know there was something else and somebody else there. it surely indicates that police, whether unintentionally, maybe playing games there at the scene, acting out the scenario with a gun in their hand, may have shot him. We don't know. But what we do know is I couldn't have shot all the shots because one of the holes was smaller than could be made from a 45.
Well, let me ask you, Free. So this would have happened after they had already came and taken you away from the scene, because if there's guns going off while you're there, you obviously would have heard it. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they took me out of the scene immediately.
Okay.
I walked into the house with the first police officer. The next police officer that came right behind me walked me out the door within a few seconds of the first one, and probably like 15 seconds or 30 seconds while they're trying to help. The second one came in, walked me out, put me in handcuffs, and that was it.
I got you. And so you're thinking that after you left, there was some
I'm only speculating.
Okay.
In fact, I really hate to do that. I'm only speculating, but what we do know, and it has to be speculation if we're going to try to go further on it, because we do know that the hole in the hand couldn't have been made from my gun.
Yeah.
That's all. But that's what we do know, and we know. I'm going to come up to this here further on. That
You have 60 seconds remaining.
initially they claimed that there were only so many shots fired, and later they said there were more. Initially they said we found all the bullets at the scene. We went over this with a fine-tooth comb, the bullet shells rather, the cartridges, and later they come back and say, "Oh, we miraculously found 2 more right here." And then they destroy the chain of custody, and nobody will take responsibility for what happened to the clip of my gun that had bullets, plural, in it, in the first 2 reports that were done independently by different police officers.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
Later were changed to say, oh no, it had only 1 bullet in it to match that there were 5 shots made instead of like 2 or 3 shots. So
Wow.
all of this fraudulent evidence is on record, and the 3552 proves it all. It's their own documents that I proved it with.
35 years, it's absolutely jaw-dropping, Free. We need to get you out of there, and I pray the Lord works a mighty miracle to get you your freedom in whatever time you have left. Thank you for sharing this. And
I couldn't agree more.
All right, that was Free Lazor. I considered the last 30 minutes an incredibly fascinating conversation with an innocent man who sat 35 years in prison in our terrible justice system. And if this doesn't bother you that this is going on in our country, then there's something wrong with your sense of humanity. I mean, this man has been through absolute hell, and I believe he did own that house from what he's told me, and it's just an absolute incredible case of Free Lazor. He's got over 400, maybe to 500 letters of character witness. This man had no prior criminal history, and you've just heard him speak about his case for the last 30 minutes, and you use your own discernment, use your own mind to make up what you think's going on. But because I know how bad our criminal justice system is, and because I have read articles of Dr. Ozoa, the coroner, I have seen articles on the internet about the corruption in his office, none of this surprises me. And I pray that you keep Free Lazor in your prayers. I pray that you write him a letter and encourage him. And when you go to sleep tonight, say a prayer for Free Lazor that the Lord will make a way to set him free.